In this video, I will be showing you how to assign materials to OnShape parts, as well as how to create multi-view drawings that include physical properties as well as material property nodes. What we've got here is our final keychain. As you can see, I have it where there are three different parts. It is my actual Fiat 500, and then I've got these two wheels, so it's tires up in the front, and then I've also got the back tires. What I'm going to actually do is I'm going to rename this. I'm going to come up with a better naming system. I'm going to go front tires, and then I'm going to end up calling these tires back here back tires. We want to always ensure that we are providing good part names or solid part names for these. So before we can end up assigning the materials and before we can actually create the multi-view drawing, what I'm also going to end up doing is I'm going to combine all of these parts. Now, if it's the case where you just have one single part, then you do not have to do this step, so just hang tight. But if you have it where there's multiple parts, you are going to want to bring up the composite part tool. So all I did is I just clicked search tools here, I typed in composite part, and it brought this up. What this will end up doing is creating a composite part, which is basically all of your three parts or however many parts, and it's just going to combine it into one part. So what I can do is I can right click this now and I can put final Fiat 500. So that's going to be my part name, the composite part. Now what I can do is I can right click this and I can end up clicking assign material. Now in here, this is where we can search for materials based off the OnShape material library. If I click this drop down, it's going to allow me to search. What we're going to be using to print these out is PLA plastic. Now this is one of the weirdest things ever, but once you search PLA, you have to actually scroll down until you see PLA. It is actually not the first option you see. So it's PLA right here, which has this following density. There's basically all these material properties about this, which we are going to end up investigating later on in the semester. Anyways, after we have PLA selected, we're gonna press the green check mark. Now what I can end up doing is I can go over here to display mass section properties, and I can end up finding some pretty important information about this. So in terms of my overall mass, or what is actually weight in this case, the weight of my object is going to be 0.047 pounds. So it's basically 5/100th of a pound. In terms of my volume, that is going to be 1.037 cubic inches. Now, as you can see here, did I end up going over? Yes, I did. I went over by almost 4/100th of a cubic inch. So there might be a minor change that I need to make to my part before I continue here, which I am going to end up doing. And I'm going to show you, if this is too big, what we can do for that. The other thing is I want to write down the density as well. And so if I ended up going back into here, we can end up finding that density. So all we've got to do is, let's see here, so it's not this guy. We're going to right click this again, and I'm going to actually go edit material. And so if I look here, I can see my density. So it is 0.045, and this is pounds per cubic inch. So I had to write down this important information about my part. Make sure that you do that too, because we're going to add that to the actual multi-view drawing. So as we talked about here, whenever I looked at my part, I saw that my volume was way too high. So it's only off by 0.04 cubic inches, which, you know, is super way too high. Anyways, we're going to end up doing a little adjustment to this. I'm going to go to the composite part, and I'm going to click on that with the transform tool. I'm going to go down to scale. What I'm going to basically do here is I'm going to make this 0.997% of the size. I'm going to end up going and selecting the origin point. That's what I want to end up scaling this down by. So if I press the green check mark, it's going to have made that smaller. So if I go back in here, I can end up looking at these properties, and I see that I went to 0.0228. If I go back into this, I can end up making this smaller. It's probably going to be the case where we're going to have to make this 0.98 is what I'm thinking. So you know, we can go back in here, we can select that, we can click on this guy, and then now we can see that my volume is pretty good to go. That's 0.976. So I'm going to end up writing that down. So my volume is 0.976 cubic inches. And then in terms of my mass is also going to change, right? Because I have a smaller volume, I made this smaller. It's going to have less material, which means it's going to be lighter. So I'm going to write that down too. So now that we've scaled that down, it's around 1 cubic inch. And within the constraints of this project, I can now right click this. I can end up clicking create drawing of this. And basically we're going to go through the same process of creating a multi-view drawing as before, except now it's of the composite part. If it's a case where you don't have the composite part, of course, you just select your single part. And so now I've got this multi-view drawing here, and this is what we're going to end up presenting to our client. We're going to end up showing them this. And so now what we can do here is we can throw in some overall dimensions, and that's basically all we're going to end up doing is throwing in these overall dimensions for this in terms of the dimensioning. So I'm going to end up throwing this in. Now, one thing that I did not like is that I selected that point. I'm going to actually go back in here and change it. So that's this point. So I have those extension lines. I have that space in the extension line. What I'm also going to do is that's the depth. I'm going to also throw in this overall width here too. Now, one thing that you might end up noticing about your dimensioning is you might try going in here. You might try to dimension out a certain part and you're unable to. So as you can see here, this dimension line, probably want to end up switching where that's at. If you're unable to find a point, what you can end up doing, so let's act like I was unable to find that point, you can actually end up creating a line. So if you use the line tool, or if you even use the sketch point tool, that works pretty well too. So let's say that I wanted to create a sketch point, this wasn't showing up, I could click right there. What I am then able to do is I can end up using the dimension tool, and you're able to actually then click on that point, and you can click on the other point, to basically be able to bring in a location so that you can end up dimensioning that out. I'm going to also end up throwing in the height into this. And so as you can see here, that's just going to be the center of this. So it's going to be another case where I'm going to end up if I want the overall dimensions, I'm going to add in another line here, or sorry, another sketch point. So let's go in here, sketch point's right here. I'm going to end up creating that sketch point right there. I'm going to go to the dimension tool. I'm going to select this point, and I'm also going to select this point at the very, very top of this. Let's try that again. There we go. So now I can put in that overall height. And so now we have those overall dimensions there. I can press escape. I can end up clicking and dragging this. I'm going to condense this a little bit more, bring this over. And then so now, just as they say in the e-text, they want us to end up adding in the notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the note. So I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to end up going notes. And then we can end up drawing this out. So notes is this. First off, all dimensions are in inches. Second point that I want to make is material properties. Now what I want to end up saying is material is PLA. So I'm going to click and drag this. So I'm going to put this in here, PLA, plastic. What I'm going to also mention is the density of this material. So the density that we found, it is 0.045, and that is pounds per, oops, what happened there? We just ended up exiting out of that. Let's try this again. So we're going to go notes. First point, all dimensions are in inches. We're going to go second point here, material properties. And I'm going to go material. Put this down here. Let's see here. So let's go back in here. I'm going to press escape. Let me double click back on this. Material is the PLA plastic, right? Density equals 0.045. Now that is pounds per cubic inch. So we're going to put that in there. What we're going to put down now for our third point is the following. I'm going to end up spacing this out a little bit better too. So we're going to bring in some spacing here. I'm going to now put in some physical properties. So they also want us to put in the physical properties. Now the physical properties, that is that our volume. Now the volume that we found is 0.976. Now remember, volume does not depend on the type of material that you're dealing with, right? It's a physical property or physical attribute. It's basically how much space something takes up. Mass is going to be 0.044 pounds. Now remember, if I end up switching the material, right? If I end up making this out of steel rather than plastic, the mass will change, right? The mass is based off of our material. However, the volume is just how much space this object takes up. Okay, so volume is not based off of the material at all. Density is based off of the type of material that you're dealing with, right? PLA plastic, very low density. That's why our mass ends up becoming so small. If we take the density and multiply it by your volume, you end up getting mass. So if you have a very small density, then you're going to end up having a pretty small mass. If we have a higher density, like something like 5 pounds per cubic inch, right? Something that's super, super, super dense, then that would end up giving us a whole lot higher mass, right? But in this case, because we're using PLA plastic, very low density, once we take density multiplied by volume, we end up with a very small mass. So those are basically the notes that we want to end up putting in here for our multi-view drawing. And this is your final multi-view drawing for your project, your keychain project. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. If you got any questions, drop them in the comments. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Bye-bye. See you all later.